So hello and welcome to the video. Spent the last couple of weeks in the world of Star Alliance, but we're back to the OneWorld Alliance today with a question that might initially sound a little niche, but which may have a much greater relevance to you than you might first think. Should you buy a round the world ticket? Travelling all the way around the world is quite a romantic notion, and I suspect it features on quite a number of bucket lists. So if you have the opportunity, is a branded round the world ticket the way to go? In this video, I'll tell you what I think, and I'll reveal what might be the most interesting conclusion I've found in any of my videos. So stick around. Hi, I'm Matt. Over the last 25 years, I've travelled a lot. I've lived in 5 countries on 4 continents. I've flown over 1.3 million miles. I've visited over 100 countries, every American state, but I'm nowhere near done. So subscribe and perhaps you'll pick up some hacks, hints and tips to make your next trip better. I always like to present any credentials I might have before starting a video like this, but I surprised even myself in preparing this video when I realised that I had actually been all the way around the world on 7 separate occasions. 4 of those were dedicated round the world tickets. The 4th was most definitely a holiday in 2004 when I took a career break. I remember taking my time to plan this one and ended up with 18 flights, 4 land segments, 11 stopovers and 8 different airlines. My 5th and 6th circumnavigations weren't booked as round the world tickets, but came during a period of extensive international travel where shrewd planning allowed me to create 2 more circumnavigations. My 7th circuit wasn't immediately obvious, but I uncovered it planning this video. This one arose as my last holiday before relocating to Australia was to Las Vegas, and my first holiday after relocating was also to Las Vegas, meaning I had circumnavigated the globe in between those 2 visits. I'm not trying to show off by sharing all of that, but I think it does highlight that circumnavigations might be more common than you'd expect. If you're planning a trip from Europe to Australia or New Zealand, you could very easily turn it into a round the world trip by just taking the long way home. So, the OneWorld Alliance clearly thinks that a round the world offering is important, as there's a dedicated area of the Alliance's website on the subject, which supports the planning and booking of such a ticket. And it's a pretty good website too. It's not perfect, but it does allow you to plan a trip in great detail. The site showcases 3 products. The OneWorld Explorer, which takes into account the number of continents transited. The Global Explorer, which is quite similar although it is based on the number of miles flown. And there's a Circle Pacific product which offers travel around the Pacific Basin on OneWorld Airlines. These are all worth knowing about, but this video will focus on those 2 round the world products. The glaring omission on the site is actually the first question that most people will ask, which is, how much does it cost? But that omission does make sense for 2 reasons. The first is that taxes and fees will be added to that base fare based on which airlines you transit. These additional costs will vary widely depending on the itinerary selected. The second is that it is a global website and offers these fares worldwide, so the cost will vary depending on where you live. I'll come back to this point later. So I deployed expertflyer.com to take a look at the underlying fares. This is a subscription-based site which will give you a spectacular amount of information about fares. I mentioned it in my video about the travel websites you need to know about, which is linked here, and I think it's probably worthy of its own video at some point. So if that sounds interesting, make sure you're subscribed to my channel so you'll know when I publish that video. And while I'm at it, please like this video and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Trawling Expert Flyer produced this table, with all figures in pounds based on starting and ending in London. Remember, this excludes all fees and taxes, but your instinct is probably similar to mine in that the economy fare looks alright and the business fare looks quite expensive. But is that instinct right? Time to look at a specific example. To keep it simple, I priced up this 3-continent itinerary with 5 stops. That priced up in economy as the £1,800 we expected, plus £562 in taxes for a total of £2,362. The same itinerary in business class would cost £5,471, again as predicted, but with £858 of taxes added for a total of £6,329. As before, the economy fare looks sort of okay, the business fare looks quite expensive. Round the world fares may be unexpectedly competitive though, because you are going in just one direction. These days we expect a one-way ticket to cost about half of a return fare. That's what it should cost, right? But when I were a lad, airline pricing was all based on return fares, as airlines didn't want people buying one-way fares as they worried that that would leave their planes empty half the time. It was common for a one-way fare to cost almost as much as a return fare, and indeed in some cases it would cost more. That sounds ridiculous, but that pricing model still prevails in certain regions of the world, and if you happen to travel through one of those regions on your round-the-world itinerary, you'll swerve that one-way price gouging, which will make your round-the-world ticket very competitive. And spoiler alert, in this sample itinerary, that is exactly what happens. So, time for a closer look, and it's time for a spreadsheet. I priced up each of the 6 legs on Kayak in both economy and business, and the results were quite interesting. If you bought the economy flights separately, you would save 30% against the cost of the round-the-world ticket. That saving assumed you'd book the exact same airlines as you did on the round-the-world ticket. If you relaxed that requirement and considered any airline that flew direct between your city pairings, what would happen? Well, in this case, not much. In 5 of the 6 legs, the OneWorld option was the cheapest anyway. Only on the London to Dubai flight would you save a few quid, actually £42 to be precise. But if you relaxed that direct flight constraint and allowed indirect flights between those city pairings, what happens then? Well, you'd find cheaper fares on 3 of the 6 legs and end up with a fare that is only £1,157. That's less than half the cost of the round-the-world ticket. So the conclusion here seems quite clear. For this kind of trip in economy, a round-the-world ticket makes little sense. I repeated this exercise with business class and the conclusions were less clear. You'd pay 49% more to buy those flights individually in business class, but that result is hugely skewed by the ridiculous cost of the Hong Kong to Los Angeles leg, which priced up at £5,500 for that one-way flight. You were banjanxed by that one-way gouging I was talking about. An indirect one-way flight via Tokyo on ANA would cost only £1,455. So if you substituted that leg in, the total cost drops to £5,388, which is a 16% saving versus the round-the-world fare. Still quite a lot of money, but again, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to buy that round-the-world ticket. If you relax the requirement to fly between those cities on OneWorld Airlines, well, you'd find that nothing changed. OneWorld Airlines were the cheapest options for all 6 legs. If you relaxed the direct constraint and allowed connections, as we did with the ANA flight a moment ago, you'd save money on 4 of the 6 legs and the tickets would cost £4,400. That's now a pretty significant 31% saving on the OneWorld round-the-world fare. 3 points of small print I should cover to save you commenting. There's no non-stop OneWorld option between Dubai and Singapore, so these results use indirect options even if I describe them as direct. Secondly, OneWorld itineraries will yield avios. An avio is worth at least 0.8 of a p from the recent affiliation with Nectar Points, so you'd get a minimum of £360 worth of avios from travelling on this itinerary as a Gold BA member. There's a decent tier point haul too. All avios earned will reduce the net cost of a specific itinerary, but as many of the alternatives we found still involve OneWorld flights, the difference in the value of the avios between options is unlikely to change your decision. And finally, 4 out of these 6 legs could have been paired up when buying tickets. You could buy one ticket from Singapore to Los Angeles via Hong Kong on Cathay rather than 2 separate legs, and something similar on American from Los Angeles to London. I did price these options up on Kayak and they made a small favourable impact on the economy pricing but made no real difference to the business class price. So I promised you the most interesting conclusion I've drawn in my YouTube career to date. Here it is. It involved looking more closely at that one-way gouging issue. If you bought those 6 economy class flights individually, but you added a return leg to each of them, it would only add £320 to the cost. So that means that, provided you time your return flights shrewdly, you could travel all the way around the world one way and all the way around the world the other way on OneWorld Airlines for less than £2,000, which is less than the cost of the round the world ticket, which is 2 circumnavigations for the price of 1. And if you relax the OneWorld airline constraint, it's even cheaper still. You could then go around the world twice for the cost of going around the world once on OneWorld Airlines. That's got to be worth a click of the like button. Considering the same thing but only in business, you could get a return leg added for only £500 more, but that Trans-Pacific leg is still fiercely expensive. If you relax that OneWorld airline constraint, you could go around the world twice for £7,155. I couldn't quite get 2 circumnavigations to price up for less than the cost of one OneWorld round the world ticket, but I think if you fiddled around with that Trans-Pacific routing, you probably could. So the conclusion here is that for a relatively simple round the world itinerary with relatively few stops, buying a round the world ticket isn't going to make sense. There is convenience from having everything on one ticket, changes are fairly easy to make, and the round the world fare books into a relatively high booking class, which can make availability easier to find, but even those advantages wouldn't outweigh the significant price disadvantage of buying that packaged ticket. But that's for simple itineraries. Does that conclusion change if you make things a bit more complicated? The tickets allow a maximum of 16 segments, so if you flew city to city without any connecting flights, you could then have 15 stopovers, which might look something like this. I said the OneWorld website was pretty good, but it is not perfect, and I wasn't able to price this up. The site works at a city level rather than at an airport level, and a change of airport is considered a segment. Try as I might, the site insisted on flying me into Tokyo Haneda and out of Tokyo Narita, which burns a segment unnecessarily. You'd be able to overcome this when actually booking, but I wasn't able to get the website to price up a 15 stopover itinerary. I did get a 14 stopover one to price up, and it held true to the £1,800 underlying price and added another couple of £100 worth of taxes, because you're actually trebling the number of airports you travel through versus that 5-stop itinerary. Time constraints have prevented me from pricing up a 15 or 16 leg itinerary to prove that the round the world ticket becomes cheaper. It took ages to analyse those 6 legs. But I am confident that the round the world ticket will represent better value the more stopovers that you add to your itinerary. And I'm sure that would be true in economy and in business class. There's lots and lots of detail that I could add. The definition of a continent is significant, how much you can backtrack is significant, there's a lot more. But the website does seem to have most of those rules built in and will kick them up when you encounter them. So I'd be inclined not to worry too much about the restrictions until the website alerts you of one. The site links to a more detailed fare guide which you can go through if you have to try and work out what the problem might be. So before I close, one last point. I promised to come back to the international availability of this fare, and from Expert Flyer I produced this table. The fares are considerably more expensive in the US and Singapore than they are in the UK, and they are cheaper still in Australia. I've not dug further into this, so there may be an explanation or a workaround, but it is something to be aware of. So there you go, round the world tickets. Probably not the best option for a simple trip, but certainly worth considering if you have something more epic in mind. Thanks for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. It really helps me with the mysteries of the YouTube algorithm if you do. And please comment as well. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're new, please subscribe. There's no cost. There's no obligation, and all it will do is make it easier for YouTube to let you know when I release new videos. If you're still watching, I'm pretty certain you'd be interested in some of the other stuff I put out as well. So thanks for watching. I'll see y'all again soon. Goodbye.